It's Monday, February 4th, 2019, at the Muang Tan market in Dien Bien Phu Town, Vietnam. If you've never been to a market in Vietnam, you'll find yourself transported into a sensory symphony, a realm where the very essence of the country pulsates through crowded streets. In many parts of Asia, local markets serve as hubs where butchers and grocers offer farm-fresh products directly to consumers. In these bustling marketplaces, one can see a variety of live animals, like chickens or seafood. Commonly known as wet markets, these vibrant spaces earn their name from their perpetually wet floors, caused by the vendors diligently washing their vegetables or cleaning fish. On this Monday morning, the wet market bustled with its usual activity. However, it wasn't just any ordinary Monday. It was the eve of the Lunar New Year, turning the market into a bustling hive of people. The Lunar New Year, known as Tet in Vietnamese, holds significant importance in this region. Tet transforms the surroundings into a vibrant parade, whether you're in the city or countryside. It brings a surge of energy and joy to the local community, and the festive atmosphere, along with celebrations, begins several days before the New Year. Under the blazing Vietnamese sun, our attention is drawn to a specific stall nestled within the bustling symphony. Drawing closer, we discover a humble yet animated poultry stall, owned and run by Tran Thi Hien, a 37-year-old mother. Mrs. Tran Thi Hien's daughter, 22-year-old Cao Mei Yuan, used to frequently assist her mother at the stall. However, since she began her university studies, returning to help became a challenge. As the Lunar New Year approached, anticipation grew among the family for a reunion and the opportunity to celebrate this festive occasion together. During the Tet Festival, it is tradition for university students to journey back to their hometowns and engage in the joyous celebrations with their families. The journey back home is a significant occasion for these students. Given the sheer size of Vietnam, many students hailing from rural regions often only make this trip during Tet. They know that the costs associated with returning home can be rather expensive, which is why most only return once a year. For Cao Mei Yuan, a student at the Tai Nguyen University of Agriculture and Forestry, she couldn't wait to reunite with her family. However, Yuan's voyage home would tragically be her last. Her life as she knew it would swiftly morph into a living hell that would persist for the agonizing days to come. In a heart-wrenching turn of events, the person whom she admired the most, her own mother, would become the agent of betrayal. Yuan would soon find herself ensnared in a nightmare. Abducted, subjected to heinous acts of assault and violation, and tormented by a group of men she had never seen before. You're listening to Heinous, an Asian true crime podcast produced by One Up Media. This episode may contain sensitive details and graphic imagery. Listener discretion is advised. In modern society, the shock value associated with female criminals tends to surpass that of their male counterparts. The shock resonates not just because of the crime itself, but also because society tends to perceive female individuals as less likely to engage in any audacious criminal activities. Yet the apex of this startling revelation unfolds in a disconcerting reality. A mother, the epitome of the nurturing and protective figure, transforms into more than just a female criminal. She becomes the direct cause of the tragic death of her own daughter. On the eve of the Lunar New Year, February 4th, 2019, the atmosphere is charged with anticipation. In the bustling core of the Muang Tan market, situated in Dien Bien province, the spotlight falls on 22-year-old Cao Mei Yuan. Despite the allure of relaxation after returning from university for the holiday break, Yuan chooses not to indulge in rest. Instead, her spirited presence is dedicated to assisting her mother at the bustling poultry stall within the market, embodying the essence of familial support and tradition during this significant time of celebration. The shop was noted to be popular with the locals, and since Yuan had a motorbike, many customers found it convenient to place orders through the phone. Following the age-old traditions of the Tet festival, a whole chicken holds a major significance as a culinary treasure. It is widely regarded as a symbol of abundance and prosperity. For many families in Vietnam, having a whole chicken on the dining table signified a belief that the upcoming year would unfold with prosperity and good fortune. It comes as no surprise that the demand for fresh chicken reached its peak during this time. Recognizing the heightened desire for freshness on this auspicious occasion, the shop found itself inundated with a surge of orders. In response, Yuan seamlessly transformed into a delivery woman, ensuring that the products reached their destination promptly and solidifying the stall's rapport with the community. Yuan's willingness to help with delivering the chickens can be attributed to the entrepreneurial tradition ingrained in Vietnamese culture. This spirit is often passed down through generations, creating a strong sense of commitment and involvement in family businesses. In Yuan's case, the poultry stall owned by her mother represents not just a source of income, but a symbol of unity and shared responsibility. Grabbing 13 freshly processed chickens in her hands, Yuan skillfully wrapped each one in snug bags, careful not to compromise their freshness. With precision and a touch of familial expertise, Yuan arranged the bounty of chickens in the cargo space of her trusty motorcycle. Donning long-sleeved shirts and a well-worn helmet, she hit the ignition and got ready to leave. As the sun dipped below the horizon, anticipation hung in the air. Tomorrow would mark the beginning of the Tet festival, prompting the temporary closure of numerous market stalls for everyone to join in the joyous celebrations. Traditionally, these stalls would gracefully reopen their doors once the Tet celebrations concluded, resuming their roles as vital contributors to the community's daily life. However, for Yuan's stall, the closure on this particular Tet Eve carried an irreversible weight. Its shutters, once a gateway to the lively exchange of goods and camaraderie, would never again creak open. It's February 3rd, 2019, a day before Yuan would set out with the 13 chickens. As the atmosphere in the market was reaching its peak, two men sauntered through the market, their presence unnoticed amid the fervor. A quest unfolded as they stopped at various stalls, asking questions to each and everyone they came into contact with. Many stall owners, engrossed in their activities, responded with puzzled shakes of their heads. The duo had come to the market to seek a specific piece of information: Yuan's phone number. They were aware that Yuan was in town helping her mother run the chicken stall. However, despite this knowledge, they refrained from approaching the stall on that particular day as Mrs. Tran Ti Hien, Yuan's mother, was visible alongside her. It becomes apparent at this juncture that the two men were evidently seeking a conversation with Yuan, but a hesitancy lingered due to the perceived obstacle posed by her mother's presence. On that day, the two men departed without speaking to Yuan. Yet the plot thickened when one of them returned the following day. February 4th, 2019, the eve of Tet. One of the men entered the market, his eyes catching a glimpse of the chicken stall at the corner of his vision. To his astonishment, Mrs. Tran Ti Hien was not seen anywhere near the stall, which created a shift in the dynamics. This was an opportunity for the man to approach and address Yuan directly. "Excuse me." The man approached her and exclaimed with a warm smile. Yuan, engrossed in preparing chickens, instinctively inquired about his order. "How can I help you?" "Oh, I'm just here to take a look," the man explained, his gaze sweeping over the array of poultry. "I'm considering placing a big order, but I need to inspect the quality of the meat first. It's for my boss, you see, and freshness is a top priority." There were other customers at the stall, and Yuan found herself immersed in a flurry of activity. Juggling various tasks, she couldn't possibly attend to everyone simultaneously. The man, understanding the bustling nature of the stall, suggested, "I'll tell you what, why don't you give me your number? I'll call you later to confirm my order. You guys do deliveries, right? What's your number? I'll confirm the details with you later." Yuan, thinking that it was just a business interaction, handed her cell phone number over to the man. As the day wore on and the market got a little quieter, Yuan finally got a chance to take a break. But then a call came in. Retrieving it from her pocket, she answered with a polite hello. On the other end, the man's voice resonated. "Hi, it's me from the market earlier. We spoke about the order." "Oh yes. How can I help you?" "I'd like to order 13 chickens. They're a special gift for my boss, and I need them delivered to a specific address in town." Yuan, noting the details, responded professionally, asking how he would like the chickens prepared and the address of the delivery. Little did she know, this seemingly routine transaction would ultimately become her final journey in the bustling streets of the market. Yuan, having arrived at the designated location, parked her bike on the side of the quiet street. The only audible sound was the gentle hum of the streets, a stark contrast to the bustling market. The door swung open, revealing the man she recognized from the market. Yuan, unsuspecting, exchanged pleasantries, her guard momentarily lowered in the familiar act of fulfilling a delivery. However, in a sudden alarming twist, the man's demeanor shifted. The man swiftly grabbed Yuan, pulling her forcefully into the house and causing the bag of chickens to tumble to the ground. Overwhelmed and in shock, she tried to scream and break free, but her efforts were futile against the relentless grip of the man. Her struggle quickly escalated into a violent frenzy as the man, driven by a malevolent intent, viciously encircled her neck with a piece of rope, ruthlessly tightening it with a brutal force. The records of the crime do not specify whether Yuan lost consciousness after the brutal struggle. What is evident, however, is that the man would then forcefully drag her into the house, firmly shutting the door behind. Subsequently, he proceeded to contact his friend, who in turn arrived at the house accompanied by another individual. Their arrival marked the ominous beginning of a living nightmare for Yuan. In the haunting hours of that very evening, the trio took turns to sexually assault her and subject her to sinister forms of torture. Following the unspeakable assault, Yuan's motorbike was driven by one of the perpetrators to Dien Bien Phu City. Along with the bike, all her belongings were confiscated, a sinister attempt to erase any trace of her presence from the house where the horrors unfolded. At 1 a.m. the next day, her motorbike and belongings were carelessly discarded in an abandoned house within the city. When morning came on the 6th of February, the relentless assault on Yuan showed no signs of stopping. The three men carelessly continued to subject her to repeated acts of sexual assault and violence. As the day progressed, the toll on Yuan's physical and emotional well-being became increasingly apparent. At this juncture, the three men convened and hatched another horrifying scheme. Having fulfilled their twisted satisfaction, their focus now shifted to a new objective: the disposal of Yuan. Immediately, the traumatized and broken Yuan was forcibly led to a truck owned by one of the men. The trio then crammed into the vehicle and drove towards a nearby cemetery. Upon reaching their destination, a sinister decision loomed among them. One of them had to be the one to kill her. As a gruesome consensus was reached, one man took a decisive step forward. With a malicious intent, he seized the already weakened and barely alive Yuan. What happened next was nothing short of horrific. In her final moments, Yuan was forced to stare into the faces of her attackers, the horrifying truth etched into her dimming consciousness as a merciless grip tightened around her neck. Once they were sure that she was dead, the men decided to dispose of her lifeless body in an abandoned house nearby. In the midst of these harrowing events, back in Yuan's family home, panic and desperation took hold as they frantically searched for any sign of her. With 2 days passing without her return, and unanswered calls and texts amplifying their concern, the family was consumed by worry. However, no one at the time knew that Mrs. Tran Ti Hin, Yuan's mother, was probably the only one with the answers. One source revealed that the perpetrators had actually contacted Mrs. Tran Ti Hin 3 days ago when they initially captured her daughter. In a chilling demand, they insisted that Mrs. Hin paid a sum of money she owed, but in response, she adamantly refused to comply with their demands. So, if Mrs. Hin knew about the potential kidnapping of her daughter Yuan, why didn't she say anything about it, or do anything about it? Well, that's because she was the one responsible for instigating this tragic chain of events. Tran Ti Hin, a 37-year-old mother and proprietor of a poultry stall, was engulfed in despair, having reported her daughter missing. Her daughter, 22-year-old Miss Cao Mei Yuan, had set out on what was supposed to be a routine delivery of chickens for her mother's enterprise, only to vanish into the void, never to return. This task, one she had executed numerous times, involved distributing chickens to various customers throughout the town. As daylight faded and night encroached without any sign of her, a chilling anxiety and fear took hold. Tran Ti Hin, consumed by an escalating terror, was forced to confront a nightmare no parent ever wishes to face. She reported her daughter missing to the local authorities. Entering the police station, her plea was laden with desperation. "Please, officer, help me find my daughter, please." The community, initially captivated by the joyful fervor of Tet, found themselves ensnared in the unsettling wave of news regarding Yuan's disappearance. The stark contrast between the celebration's exuberance and the looming dread for Yuan's safety drew a stark line between the ebbs and flows of life's greatest joys and its deepest sorrows. Then, on the morning of February 7th, a pivotal breakthrough emerged, albeit one that bore the gravest of news. Prompted by a call from a local, Miss Bui, the authorities were led to a discovery that would indelibly scar the memory of that year's Tet celebration. The discovery of Yuan's body marked a tragic end, with the circumstances surrounding her demise as devastating as they were appalling. In a season of rebirth, the hunt for justice began, turning a time of celebration into a quest to mend a family's shattered peace. At the tender age of 22, Yuan's life was abruptly extinguished, her body discovered in a forsaken pig barn within the Tan Noa commune. The scene that greeted investigators upon their arrival was one of sheer horror and disbelief. Clad only in a brown autumn-winter shirt and underwear, with her trousers ominously absent, the state of Yuan's attire pointed to a sinister conclusion, often drawn under such grim circumstances. An upturned helmet shrouded her head, concealing beneath it vital clues to the tragedy that had unfolded. Once removed, it unveiled disturbing signs of contusions and bruising around her neck. suggesting strangulation as the likely cause of her untimely demise. The evidence strongly indicated that Yuan had been subjected to sexual assault before being mercilessly killed. The revelation of Yuan's murder sent shockwaves throughout Vietnam, catapulting the province into the glaring spotlight of media scrutiny. Through tears, Miss Hien, Yuan's mother, shared poignant details about their last conversations with various news outlets. Yuan, who was on the cusp of graduation in merely 6 months, had expressed a heartfelt desire to look after her mother. The tragedy of Yuan's death was amplified by the cruel irony that her desire to stay near home, especially during Tet to support her family, ultimately led to her death. The image of a bereaved Miss Hien ignited a media storm, with the scant details available to the public, fueling rampant speculation. Among the flurry of conjectures, one particularly malicious theory surfaced: the suspicion that Miss Hien, known among neighbors for her apparent affluence, might have inadvertently provoked a robbery, spiraling into the tragic loss of her daughter. This suspicion would soon find itself not just validated, but overshadowed by the unfolding of events far more sinister than anyone had dared to imagine. With mounting pressure to solve the case, authorities worked round the clock. Major General Sang A Hong, director of Dien Bien Provincial Police, explains. Immediately after receiving the information, I and many officers and soldiers were not allowed to sleep during Tet. During the investigation, the Provincial Police Department reviewed about 1,000 people of the same age and gender in question to eliminate each case. Not only that, we also mobilized maximum reconnaissance and investigators and received help from professional units of the Ministry of Public Security. During the week of solving the case, these officers and soldiers had almost no sleep. This Herculean pursuit of justice eventually bore fruit, narrowing the focus to a solitary figure of suspicion, Mr. Vuong Van Hung. Mr. Hung was born in 1984 to a world that seemed to conspire against him from the start. Described by law enforcement as obstinate and defiant, Hung's demeanor was not unlike that of a seasoned criminal. In Hung's eyes, one could glimpse the shadow of a life that had taken a relentless toll. His parents' separation and his mother's untimely death from illness began his descent that further accelerated as his 2 brothers succumbed to drug addiction. Forced under his father's roof, Hung's path veered sharply into the criminal world, marking the inception of a life entangled in lawlessness. By the time he reached adulthood, his name had been etched into the criminal records with 4 legal violations and 3 convictions. Yet, it wasn't the litany of crimes that drew the police's gaze toward him in the wake of Yuan's disappearance. It was a single clue: a phone number, the last known contact before Yuan vanished into the night. This digital breadcrumb led investigators through the dense web of the Central Highlands communication networks. The SIM card, a puzzle of borrowed identities, unraveled to reveal its last holder, Mr. Vuong Van Hung. Initially, his reaction to the scrutiny was evasive. He conceded only to what was already within the police's grasp, a tactic that only served to muddle the investigation further. As details trickled out at a painstaking pace, the public speculation continued to flourish, spawning theories that ranged from the plausible to the absurd. Among these was a widely circulated rumor of a drunken assault by 4 or 5 individuals, a narrative so pervasive that Major General Sang A Hong felt compelled to intervene. There were likely more people involved in the case, but not 4 to 5 people who got drunk and raped the victim, as rumored. The public was indeed wrong. They weren't drunk, and there were more than 5 people involved. Evidence began to converge on Hung, from DNA samples to personal belongings of Yuan found in his possession. On the 11th of February, Hung's defenses crumbled as he confessed to the murder. Citing robbery and Yuan's beauty as his twisted motivations. This admission, while initially aligning with the physical evidence, would soon unravel to reveal a narrative even more depraved. As investigators peeled away the layers of the crime, they learned that Hung was not a lone predator that night. Instead, Yuan had been ensnared in a vile plot, orchestrated by several individuals, marking the beginning of a nightmarish ordeal. From captivity and repeated assault, Yuan met a brutal and premature end to her life. On the 17th of February, the investigation took a significant turn with the arrest of 3 additional individuals: Pham Vang Miem, Luang Van Hung, and Luang Van La. Yet the complexity of the case only deepened as the suspects began to expose each other, expanding the circle of guilt to 9. Bound by tangled threads of family ties, shared incarcerations, or drug dependencies, with the majority embroiled in addiction, this group harbored dark secrets. Among them was a woman, Bui Thi Kim Tu, the spouse of one of the assailants, whose role in the tragedy was chilling. She stumbled upon the group as they tormented Yuan, yet chose indifference, merely instructing them to move their heinous acts to another room. However, Bui's involvement extended beyond mere apathy. She orchestrated a deceitful ploy. You see, Miss Bui was the same lady who led authorities to discover the body at the very start, triggering the investigation. It was all part of their initial plan to pretend to stumble on Yuan's body and misdirected the police in the initial stage of the investigation. As the group of perpetrators expanded, another man, a Mr. V. Van Tuan, would turn this entire case in a different direction. Tuan, along with his wife, was no stranger to the underbelly of crime, both being actively involved in drug dealing, a vocation marked by peril and desperation. The connection between Tuan and the tragedy traced back to a transaction in May 2009 with Miss Hin, Yuan's mother. Following negotiations, it was agreed that she would acquire 2 cakes, or approximately 4 packets of heroin, valued at 300 million Vietnamese dong, or around $13,000. However, the deal went awry when Miss Hien managed to elude payment, leaving Tuan in the lurch. His subsequent arrest for drug trafficking led to a stint in prison, only gaining his freedom in early 2019. It was upon his release that Tuan resolved to settle old scores, determined to reclaim what he believed was rightfully his. Miss Hien, portrayed as the innocent and bereaved mother, had inadvertently entangled herself with individuals of a particularly dangerous ilk. Her actions, whether born out of desperation or deceit, had severe repercussions. Tragically, it was Yuan who bore the ultimate cost, her untimely death a harrowing settlement of her mother's alleged debt. In the wake of Tuan's damning confession, the investigative gears turned with a renewed vigor, compelling the authorities to summon Yuan's mother for an extensive round of questioning. By May 2019, the hammer of justice fell heavily upon her, convicting her of drug trafficking charges. Contrary to her initial assertions of unfamiliarity with the implicated group, it emerged that she had prior acquaintanceship with Tuan, unraveling a web of deceit that had initially shielded her involvement. The court case that ensued after would seem like a soap opera, with many false statements and counterarguments against each other. Among the most contentious points were allegations of police misconduct, notably claims that Hung had endured a relentless 7-day ordeal of abusive interrogations. Hung's harrowing account of being stripped, subjected to electric shocks with batons until a confession was extracted, became a focal point of controversy. Despite his claims, public sentiment largely veered towards skepticism. Eventually, even the father of the victim and husband of Miss Hien requested for more time and thorough analysis. According to him, he believes that many perpetrators still have not been caught, while his wife seemed wrongly locked up for drug trafficking. he asserted in court that his wife is innocent. In total, 6 of the 9 were found guilty and sentenced to death, while Miss Hien, Yuan's mother, was sentenced to 20 years in jail for drug trafficking. As of the time of writing, there seems to be some appeals pending, but it's unlikely that the verdict would be overturned significantly. In this tangled saga of justice, sorrow, and contested narratives, Yuan's spirit may finally find the solace of rest, even as the echoes of the case continue to reverberate through the lives of those entangled in its wake. Heinous, an Asian true crime podcast, is brought to you by One Up Media. This episode was produced and written by Guangjin, edited by Alex, narrated by Jason, audio experience by Ethan Sam, additional engineering by Ashley from One Up Media. Thank you for listening. We'll see you in the next one.